On this activities page that we have created in the previous lesson, we have a perfect candidate for creating separate component, and that is this markup of individual list item, which represents activity. So let's go inside of the activities component, cut the whole markup of this list item, and the component which is going to represent individual list items will be called activity item. Please note that I haven't used prefix the in the component name, since this component will be used on the page more than once. And as we have already done several times before, we're gonna create new component within components folder with the name activity item and paste our list item markup in here. But now we need to move this v4 directive from this component and place it directly on our new component tag, activity item. Since now we're going to render activity item component multiple times, depending on how many elements will be inside of activities array. But this activities array is declared in the current component the activities, so activity item component doesn't know which activity exactly it should render. And to tell activity item component which activity it should render, we're gonna pass activity as a property with the same name, activity. And since activity item component also has to render select box with a list of options specified inside of period select options, we also have to move this constant inside of activity item component. So let's create new script tag within activity item component and paste that list. Along with this, we also have to move all necessary imports from the activities component. Let's cut these 3 imports from here and move it inside of activity item component. And just because activity item component is stored within components folder, we no longer have to mention this folder when importing base components. And what we're gonna have to do instead is to go back to the activities component and import our new activity item component from the components folder. And then time to declare one property which activity item component accepts. With the name activity, we're gonna use macro define props and use object notation to declare our props. Let's add one property with the name activity, which will be required, and the type of this property will be string. And in order to store currently selected value of the base select component, we need to declare separate variable. Let's do it right here. This will be a reactive variable, so we need to use special Vue function called ref. An initial value for this variable will be null. And don't forget that ref function should be imported from Vue package. And now if we inside of Vue DevTools will select activity item component, on the right side we can see that our new reactive variable seconds to complete has appeared. And now we need to pass value of this variable down to base select component as a property with the name selected, just to be able to control value of the select box from parent component, which in our case is activity item component. Let's also use one of the values of the select box as initial value for seconds to complete variable. For example, we can specify 15. And after we pass down this variable seconds to complete as a property selected inside of base select component, we should see that all select elements will automatically show that value. And indeed, all select boxes show selected value 15. Great, and now we need to register listener for select event, so that whenever value of this select box changes, it should notify our parent component to update seconds to complete reactive variable. We have already registered listener for the select event inside of timeline item component. Let's copy this line from here and put it directly on our base select component. We're gonna have to update value of the seconds to complete reactive variable. So let's use proper variable name in here. And before checking this out in the browser, let's return null value as initial value for seconds to complete variable. Inside of Vue DevTools, we can see that seconds to complete initially stores null value, and once we choose different option within select element, that value will be updated, as we can see in here, because now we're handling select event from base select component and appropriately update reactive variable seconds to complete. And then that reactive variable seconds to complete will be passed inside of selected prop to base select component. And those two variables will be always in sync, no matter how many times we will modify value of the select element. And additionally, whenever we click on the reset button, our selected property, as well as reactive variable seconds to complete, will get null value, which is expected. And this way we made our select box element fully controllable from activity item component.